Reshaping the world of sports and entertainment sometimes means that you have to join forces, and that's exactly what SeiSei Management and SEG are gonna do. So here I am with both founders from SeiSei Management, Karim Erja, and SEG founder, Kees Vos.
Yes.
Kees,
Casey, whatever.
Kees Vos. Is it already too soon to congratulate you guys, or is it?
Certainly not.
No?
No.
Done deal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Best deal of the year?
At least one of the best deals of the year. yes.
Because for the listeners, they're now familiar with SEG if they have been listening to this podcast, but I'm not sure if they're familiar with SeiSei Management. Karim, can you tell us a bit more about the company?
Yeah. So the company focuses on building brands around talent. What we've been doing is use the core talent of the people to get off their core talent. Sounds kind of cryptical, but what we mean by that is that if you strive to become the best in your profession, what happens if you get injured or what happens if your career ends? It's always good to be ready to have a second career or even a third one and maximize your opportunities. So
there's a lot of companies that, building brands that has become of a term that a lot of companies use.
Yep.
You have the knowledge and you have also the proven record with your clients. Can you name one of them that really fits out?
Obviously Rico Verhoeven, world champion kickboxing, working with him since 2014. He was the champion just before we met. And he thought when he arrived at the airport, all the press would be there, all the sponsorship would come in. But the opposite was the fact. And we started creating a strategy, a long-term strategy. And today, it's very fruitful.
Yeah, because now he's also a Hollywood blockbuster actor.
Yeah, entrepreneur, equity, brand deals, you name it.
Bit like Kees.
I'm not a Hollywood actor.
He could be.
No way.
Why was this moment the right time for you guys to collaborate?
No, I think that the whole idea of creating something lasting and creating something meaningful for our clients and ourselves is something that we have longed for a long time. But when I met Karim, I had the feeling that he could be the right guy and for us to further build that. And as you said, he has a proven track record. He's a very nice guy, a very intelligent guy. And I think he fits DNA-wise, and he fits also with the goals we have and the dreams we have.
Because DNA-wise, what would you say is the DNA that he fits in perfectly?
No, he's down to earth. He has a good sense of humor. He's intelligent, and he's a family guy. He just fits the way we think about life and the way we handle things. So it's a good match. We've been dating for quite a long time, actually.
We did the dating.
But that's how it is. You have to build a relationship, and it's.
You almost friend-zoned me. So
I'm familiar with that feeling.
Yeah.
Cool. But if you, it's actually quite funny because this year we've talked a lot about SEG being 25 years now.
Yes, correct.
You said you've been working with Rico since 2014, but actually you've been in the business for 25 years as well. It all started 25 years ago for you too.
Yeah. So this company, SeiSei, started in 2007.
What is SeiSei, by the way?
Yeah, that's a funny story. So if you sign up for the Chamber of Commerce, you have to come up with a name. And it was actually my second company. First one in 1998. And then I have to be creative. And what's the core value I value the most? It was being creative. So I Googled. There was no chat, GPT, not at all. So I like the Asian style of doing business, their culture, doing all as a community, symbiotic relationships, etc. And I Googled, what's creative in Japanese? And I think it was the third result. It showed up SeiSei. I was like, hey man, that's short and fits like a glove. And then years later, I was in Tokyo, and somebody asked me the same question, but that person was actually Japanese. And then, he said, okay, but it's not like the perfect translation. It didn't mean dog shit or whatever, but still, it has to do with being creative. So
something with creative.
Yeah. So my purpose was
actually it's a really creative form of thinking. Like
yeah.
That.
Yeah.
It's the third common creative phrase of Japan. SeiSei.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for saving me, man.
But and then you started Chamber of Commerce and you got SeiSei management.
Yeah.
For you, it was a core football back when you started. Sports entertainment group?
No, it was always the idea to have multiple sports. We started with football.
You started with football.
And then we did cycling and esports and other things. So individual athletes as well. So it's been multiple sports.
But you with your football background together with Alex, it was a no-brainer that you would start with a football player.
Football is one of our passions. But
exactly.
I think, in general, I'm a sports fan and I like multiple sports, also to follow and to watch it. So...
Yeah, so what was the first client that you think about, that changed the way of thinking in the industry?
To me, actually, it also started with football. I wasn't a very gifted footballer, but I could give it a try at PSV in Eindhoven as a Rotterdam guy. And then at an internship, I tore my ACL. But actually, the team was great players, Badouin and all of those guys. So I didn't make it, I'm the famous story of the guy. Yeah, I could have made it, but
so that also you have in common.
No, I was not. I was not that good. So.
I know, but it started there. I was a young kid, had the same dream, but I let it go. Started studying, and then my first client was a dancer, and dancers. Most of them are the backups for an artist, and I figured, hey, what if this guy, he has all the assets, good looks, good movements, and we started building that brand. And eventually, it's Timor Steffens, by the way. He evolved into working with Michael Jackson, and the whole strategy was the blueprint of a blueprint that I deployed to other clients as well, and artists, footballers as well. So a very diverse roster of athletes and artists. That's what I started with.
And now those forces will be a joint force. What's the biggest challenge for you guys ahead?
There's always challenges ahead.
I know.
So that's even if you're not going to work together, you have challenges. But for us, it's to fulfill our dreams, So we would like to create something extra for our clients, for ourselves. Yeah. So and Karim is going to focus on creating IP, creating IP for together with our clients, together with our partners. So and that sounds like a very general term, but it can also be anything. It can be that we will create IP in our artist department. We can create IP in our football department, the cycling department. There's so many things.
A few examples that for the listener that thinks, okay, I'm new to this world. What's an IP on football?
So we have listeners. That's good.
The guys of the technique.
Okay. We have listeners. That's nice to hear. Okay, we can create a new band, singer, DJ, whatever, and put it out in the market with a very good plan, and not just for the sake of it, but just to add something, to create value. We can come up with a new bike, which is maybe revolutionary because we have so much knowledge of the cycling market, cycling industry. We have the network. So there's let's say the possibilities are endless. You have to start somewhere, So let's say the biggest challenge is to pick the right battle, I would say, and to focus on 2, 3, 5 projects, because you can't do it all at once. But there's plenty of opportunities.
Have you had, because what you just said, that a talent thrives on their core talent, and then what you see often is after their career they're searching for their purpose.
Yeah.
Have you had experiences with a football player, for example, that wanted to do a crossover, maybe in music, in football, or in film or entrepreneurship? I think that's the core reason of this collaboration, right?
Not only, from a certain point of view, it's all about the talent. But if you look at it from a broader perspective, as a company, you should not only rely on what your talent does, but also their communities around them. Together with your talent, you can create something that's feasible for their fans or their community around them. So
the old-fashioned thought of a football player should focus on the match, and a musician should focus on his music.
That's outdated. That's outdated. I think it's all about culture, and what I mean by culture is, if I take Rico, for instance, he's been a long time undisputed world champion, and when he started being involved in movies, people said, "Yeah, focus on your sports." But he kept on winning titles. So he debunked that like prejudice, easily. But the thing is that if you think of creating a brand, it's more than just being a pretty girl or pretty guy. It's all your assets. You have to map them out and see whether you're a good talker, or maybe you have humor and become a stand-up comedian. Or maybe you have a total different talent, become a golf player. I don't know, it doesn't, I don't want to box a person into a certain vertical. Look at it from a broader perspective. And that's for SEG a very fruitful future, I think.
Where's the line of thinking outside of the box? So have you ever had that maybe a client told you, hey, I want to become that, or hey, I want to get interested in that? And that you say, hey,
I have to be realistic, obviously.
Exactly, but where's the difference between being realistic and chasing a dream?
That's between the dream and the reality, I would say. But of course you can have dreams. And it's also not to say that every talent can become something else all of a sudden. That's also not the case. And it's also perfectly fine if you end your career and you don't do anything if you don't want to. You know, that's fine. As long as you have a purpose in life. And not every ex-football player becomes a coach, and not every ex-football player works in the football industry. The only thing is that we would like to challenge our clients and to make sure that they think about what's next, and we would like to speak to them about how to achieve that. Then, if they have some kind of dreams or a purpose. And we won't be able to all of a sudden create plans for all of our clients. That's also not what we're aspiring. But and as Karim put it, we also need to think about a life beyond that talent. So to create IP, maybe that's intellectual property. It can also be a format for a TV program or for a documentary series, or it can be very broad. And Karim is creative, but he also has always a foot in real life. So it's not only dreaming what he does; he also makes those things reality. And I'm very happy that we're joining forces, and he's joining us and has a position in our company now, which enables him to play that game on a higher level and on multiple, let's say, worlds at the same time. Because we are in football, and we are in cycling, and we are in esports, and we are in music. And combining his network with our network, gives us a massive opportunity, I would say. Yeah.
So what are, and letting go of your companies maybe sounds a bit harsh, but what's the biggest challenge of I'll still put it, letting go of SeiSei management?
I think the hardest part for me would be that I always envisioned a boutique company, and boutique means small, very close to your clients.
Personal.
Yeah, personal. And I needed that because it enabled me to master the craft of being involved in events, TV, sports, music, all of those angles. And that kind of, gave me the creativity to create more opportunities for whatever is needed. And letting go of that boutique behavior, and not small thinking, that's something else. But boutique is with let's say we had, like, including our footballers, I think we had 20, 30 clients tops.
Managed by how many people?
6 to 8 people. And now you're talking about 800 clients. And getting back to your earlier question on what would be the hardest is to identify the opportunities of all of those 800 clients. It's not that I'm going to do 800 interviews, but which data points can we identify to see where we can create more value for everybody? And maybe we should use tech or whatever data is available, or even create a new model to identify it. And that's a challenge, and a really nice and cool challenge. So making that move is the most challenging part.
I also like the part that if I think about it, I've been working with footballers for several years as well, and there's a few players that always had like a side hobby, but they were taught to think like, okay, but I'm a football player, so I have to. So I had guys who would play guitar. There was a guitar at their home, and they would play actually quite nice, and they didn't dare to sing. But if they started, it sounded quite all right. But they were too focused on the football, so they let it go. So actually, it's really funny to create the most talent that you have. You're also wasting a lot of talent in life.
Yeah, but I think that example, to zoom in that example, I don't know which player you talk about, but it's kind of irrelevant, because the nice thing about this example is that, let's say in the field you have a player. I stick to football right now for the matter of this example, and everybody hates this guy because he's harsh and he's not the crowd's favorite guy. But all of a sudden it turns out he's a perfect guitar player, or he can paint like Rembrandt. It gives a total different perception of who he is as a person. Yeah. And I think that's where the good stuff is,
And that's also what people like, because you always see it. For example, recently, Gerald Alders, our player who went to SC Twente on loan, and he started to play the piano, and then all of a sudden he went viral by playing the piano. I'm not saying that it's not special, because it's really special.
But he broke the mold. Yeah, because people perceive him only as a player. Yeah. And that's where I think people are wrong, and that's up to us to create a person that's more than just that one sole vertical.
But sometimes a player needs that focus as well. So there's no good or bad.
No.
So it's not that everybody all of a sudden has to have a hobby and turn that into something.
Yeah. No. Hey, can you play the guitar, man?
You can't play it. Oh,
playing,
terrible.
I'm playing United this weekend.
You're not a fit for SEG.
No, but
you're right.
So whatever you need for your own career. So your career is your focus, and if Rico Verhoeven needed that focus to perform, then he would not have this Hollywood career. But he apparently needed to chase that dream, to give him more energy to perform on pitch, to put it that way. So everybody's different, in life, and we need to find the right opportunities.
Yeah, you're not going to push it up on clients.
No, of course not. And I think that Karim has proven over the years that he can find that talent and that certain angle. But as I said, there's so many opportunities lying ahead of us, and now it's more okay. Which one do we pick? Which one do we do first? Because we can't do it all at the same time. No, but I'm looking forward to our marriage here.
But I also think in terms of what we just said, it's also a sort of ideal world where a striker of Manchester United suddenly plays the O2 Arena. But I also, in case you visit a lot of football clubs, you talk to a lot of technical directors. I also think that in the world of football, the mindset of what we just bespoke is maybe a bit more conservative than the entertainment world.
Yes, 100%. The football industry is very conservative. It starts from the top, so it starts from FIFA. They're trying to be very modern and give out peace prizes all of a sudden. So maybe that will change the whole industry as well now.
But also
they become very progressive now.
If you have a football player, who's in the starting 11 and is a key player of their club, and suddenly he's posting stuff that he's making video clips. We've seen it in the past with some footballers. Maybe you'll get a call from a technical director from, hey, your player is making all these kinds of side projects.
Yeah, they are afraid of not being focused, that if you have things.
But what's an answer to that then? Based on
educate them. Because, in the end, they pay a lot of money for the player to focus and create more value for the team and the club. So first and foremost, that's their, main purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes if you attract more people to the stadium because that player is known outside of the field, it also brings more commercial value.
Yep.
So it's a very thin line, but you have to educate people and show them that it go hand in hand. And the grass is always greener, In Europe, people aspire to be in the US. And people from the US drive European cars and want to be in Paris and Italy. Yeah. That's their culture. And same goes for athletes and artists, Rappers want to become footballers. And footballers want to become rappers, So why should you have to choose?
Yeah.
Whether you can make that an opportunity, but never forget your core value. And
well, it's interesting that you just said, there's a thin line because it is still during these years, it's still a thin line. Have you ever made a mistake of chasing maybe the wrong talent or?
So we're going to talk about fun stuff, Come on.
We don't learn.
Everybody makes mistakes in life.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because you learn from mistakes and yes, maybe there's a bit to learn here.
We've learned, yeah.
And I thought...
And our listeners want to learn, but also they want to hear fun stories.
Fun stories.
Yeah,
so I thought I start with the bad news and we end up with the good news. And then everyone leaves the building happy after.
But I understand where you're going.
Yeah. So what's the most beautiful, amazing thing that happened to you, Kees?
Oh, you give him the good stuff, right? Okay, good start, man.
Most beautiful thing.
No, but is there because
my family.
Karim has a really concrete example of Rico, going to the US, going to Hollywood, becoming a major movie star, filming with Jason Statham, and also maintaining his titles in the world of fighting. And actually, I asked you the question, but we didn't get the answer. Have you got the crossover that's been really successful?
Not that I know of, no.
Have you made any mistakes? But that was.
No, but I say my role is also a bit different in the company right now. So it's I'm not into very much personal management, so to say. So it's more let's say trying to help my colleagues and trying to help my staff here and to let's say to create value. So that's more my role. So I'm not into
I was thinking
personal
maybe
management.
Kevin Stroopman, who retired recently. And I think you also have a lot of conversations about entrepreneurship, about.
Oh yeah, listen. That you speak to your clients and you talk about like what would be next and how can you have, let's say, purpose in life and to do something you like, so not force somebody into. You're from football, so you need to be having a role in football, or you have to be a coach. Or, for example, in Robin van Persie, it turned out to be great. That I thought he could be a very good coach or manager, and
which has proven.
Now he's proving that. So that's a nice trajectory, and that's nice to be part of that. But again, it's not for everyone, So for Kevin, we've had all kind of different conversations about what would be next. But first and foremost, enjoy, let's say, your retirement and enjoy it because you've earned it. Because it's quite a roller coaster from when you're 15, 16-year-old, your career sort of starts, and then until you're 35, it's quite there's quite some emotions involved and quite some setbacks and highs and lows in the end. So it's good to reflect and enjoy a little bit of free time, and then think about, okay, what's my next move. And with him, I'm talking a lot about like what could you do, not what should you do, what could you do,
and also
because in the end it's his decision, right? So.
Also, you just said sports entertainment group, so there's sports entertainment, but you've been a fond fan also of. The Hollywood world, you know a lot about film, you know a lot about music. If you look at it, you just said, Karim, the US is always looking at Europe, and Europe is always looking at the US. Is this the fruitful collaboration that we just talked about? Is it also a step towards the US? Because you have a lot of experience over there.
Yeah. So personally, I don't perceive US as the promised land.
No?
No, it's I think more global because there are so many people all over the world, and sports is connecting people. It's a cliche, but it is what it is. And I think the smart thing for us to do is to look at the world as our stage, And I know in certain countries, football is not on the level that is on the Premier League or whatever, but still you have a lot of fans.
Yeah.
And if you don't look at just making the deal with a footballer, but you can also create value for the fans, how beautiful is that? And maybe we can, Japan, you see a lot of Japanese players over in Europe, and maybe we can create some creative stuff over there that young kids get interested in football at an early age already. And hopefully we create superstars of the future. But from a creative perspective, you should not only look at this specific country, if you ask me, but more as the global stage as, we are a Dutch company, SEG. And it sounds cocky, but if you look at, what John Amal did with The Voice of Holland, in the US, in the early days, you had the big painters, Rembrandt and Van Gogh. You have Philips, you have all big Dutch companies. And I think it's nice if SEG can,
contribute to the
contribute
Dutch
to
heritage.
Dutch heritage. But that's you have to think big.
The Voice in SEG.
Yeah, no, but it sounds cocky, but what I mean is, you have to strive for the biggest, and I think that's what we're striving for, and that kind of sparked me in our conversations.
Yeah, you can take the good things from the US. You can take the good things from other
what
parts
are the
of
good
the
things?
world.
Because you've always been interested.
If you look at the management side of things or agent side of things, they are way ahead of how it's organized in Europe.
For example?
It's the consolidation happened there, I think 30 or 40 years earlier than here. So here it's a cottage industry. So there's many football agents and many football agencies. If you look at how let's say power is divided in let's say Hollywood, it's you can count the real big agencies on one hand. So that's different. So
people talk more about the Super Bowl halftime show than the match itself, for example.
That's true. And now you see also that development coming into Europe. You see that, let's say, the transfer window is sometimes even more entertainment than the games itself. Where's people going to? And we play a role in that. We are creating that transfer window, together with other agencies and players, and so we are one of the actors in that front. So there, it's you have to be aware of it, and you have to take that also to the next phase. So we I think we are thinking like-minded. We want to take the good things from all over the world, but we are Dutch, yes, and we are European, and we believe in the way we do things. I think there's not nice things to come. So that maybe in a year's time we have this conversation again, and then we can talk about what we've achieved over the
some courtside tickets in LA.
Courtside tickets.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, is that your
no?
Is that your goal? Yeah.
No, but while you were talking, I was thinking.
Fix it tomorrow, man.
No, but like 25 years ago, that integration already started, and that's why I'm saying courtside tickets, where they put the major celebrities on the court side. I always think about Ari Gold, based on Ari Emanuel, for example, who had been for one of the most successful TV shows, Entourage, one of the biggest stars, but was based, if you take all the lunatic sides away, he was already working like that back then, 25 years ago.
Yeah. Definitely. So again, I think the agency management world in the US is ahead of the European way of doing things. So we can learn from that and
is it the blueprint?
and pick no, not really, but pick the right let's say cherry picking. We can do that, and we have our own path and we have our own vision, and I think that by joining forces we can be tremendously successful, and I'm very happy that Karim is joining us and is bringing his expertise and clients with him. So I really think that we are making the next wave actually in this in this industry, and we are able to do that together. So that's.
You just said let's have this podcast in 1 year and look back at this conversation. If we're gonna make it a bit more juicier next year, where are we?
Juicier.
It
was fun. I was asking for fun.
Yeah, fun. So
juicy. Okay.
No, I think next year we have launched a couple of creative formats, and whether they're immediately going through the roof or is a very interesting potential new way of thinking, I don't know, but definitely gonna come up with some creative new things.
Yeah, I agree. There will be some nice things happening coming year, and whether it will be let's say a massive success immediately and be rolled out like the Voice of Holland or Rembrandt paintings, I don't know yet. That's for us to see. So,
I'd say
the pencil.
I'd say in every division we should have at least one tangible format starting or already far in the process. I think that's a nice goal. Yeah. Whether it's cycling, football, women's football, esports, performance.
That's a nice dot on the horizon. Let's stick to that, and then next year, 9th of December, 2026.
Call me out on that.
Yeah. You haven't asked how we met, huh?
Oh no, I just heard you went dating, so I don't know. What's the story behind your?
I want to thank Arno Phillips because he made this all happen. You know, he knows Karim very well. He knows me very well.
Yeah, Arno Phillips, the physio.
Not physio,
man. Wait, I wasn't the director of performance lab.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
but
he started off as the best physio in the world, but now he's the performance director.
That's what I want to say. The legendary. Physio who went everywhere in the world with
but that's true, you know. To be honest, you know, we've been in talks with several companies that had interest in acquiring us, and I told Arno this. Arno is also part of Team Rico because he's the best performance coach there is, and he said, you know, don't forget about SEG. So to be honest, and I told Kees this, I had my prejudice. You know, everybody talks crap about the bigger agents and you have your prejudice. And he said, no, then talk to the guys yourself. And then we had a meeting with Kees Ploegsma, Jeroen, Kees. Everybody was sat at the table and they were like, okay, ask us, you know, straightforward. And let us tell all the bad stories you heard about us. And then we had a very deep conversation. And I was like, hey, I'm sorry for the prejudice, you know, now I understand. And then it was actually a year ago, and then we started talking, and Kees actually suggested, why don't we do a project together all at once? And we were like, let's have some more conversations. And more became, I think, 12 or 15 conversations, but all in good spirits. And sometimes you need to, you know, before you marry or before you even date, you know, see through.
Spend a few nights together.
Yeah. This is getting corny, man.
We did. It's all a metaphor. Yeah, the listeners, it's a metaphor.
No, but we took our time, and I think, you know, what Arno saw is he was already on the floor, and he knew me, he knew what our company does, and he saw, you know, that's
the potential.
Yeah, synergy.
Yes. So, thanks for asking how we met. So,
like I said, I like to close off with a fun story. Okay. So, thank you. Good luck, Karim. You still have 800 clients to interview. So let's round it up.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Hey, chat.
And we'll see each other next year.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks,
guys.